It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
For the first time since last Thursday, it is Zachary Smith and Alan Saunders, both on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Before we get into anything, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave us a like. But Alan, what's going on?
Smitty, it's a beautiful day. The Steelers won. Everyone is happy. We're all living in harmony after a tortuous first week. They beat the Browns. They kept their home Monday Night Football streak. The Browns is still the Browns, and all is right in the world. I feel like I showed up to see like Katy Perry and ended up at a death metal concert. That's like where I'm at right now. Like, didn't the Steelers win? Why is everyone so angry? Why is that guy wearing eyeliner? No, like what? I feel like we're in this like time warp where I have to keep reminding myself that the Steelers won last night and it was not like a fluke win. Like it was a solid victory. People are angry, Smitty. People are angry.
Maybe it's just because we had Monday Night Football almost turn into Tuesday morning football. A lot of people probably had to wake up early
because they're tired. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Like I could buy that. That is a solid theory. It was like a 3 cup of coffee morning for me. I got done about 3:30 last night. Got going about 8:30 this morning. Ian's can do that math. Like that's not pretty. Maybe that's it. You may be onto something. Maybe everyone is just cranky because they stayed up too late last night, and that tomorrow we will all feel much better about the Steelers win.
To a degree, I think that's the case. I also think, and there's, no matter how last night's game went, no one was going to be able to go to sleep right away. Well, obviously for you working after the game ends, even for fans, you're either riding that high of winning the football game, or if they lost, man, you would have just been stewing in that for hours. I probably didn't go to sleep until 3. I have a 7 a.m. alarm for work. So we're here, but I think a lot of it too would have to do with the fact that we see that terrible performance in week 1. You obviously see the defense really turn it around in week 2, especially from like a splash play perspective. They still spend a lot of time on the field. That obviously equates to the offense putting them in that position, and they were giving up a good bit of yardage as well in that time. But the splash plays were there. But offensively, you really didn't see a ton of strides, I feel like, taken. Like they look better, but did you see enough improvement from the offensive side to feel that much better after week 2 than in week 1?
Enough is the word that's getting me there. I did see improvement. They were better. Like they didn't, I think significantly, especially considering without Deontay Johnson, the same would have been worse, right? Like they had to be better in week 2 than they were in week 1 just to replicate week 1's results, because they were doing it this time without their best offensive player. And so they did that and they were better. I don't think there's clear improvement there. I also think they ran some good stuff. Like they looked like at times they knew what they were doing. Jaylen Warren was very good in the first half. Najee Harris had a couple big runs in the second half. We got George Pickens on some in-breaking stuff, wide open, and with no Deontay Johnson on the field. I said here, I was like, he may not be open the whole rest of the year, because if I'm the defensive coordinator, I'm just like, 14, 2 guys go that way. And the Steelers still got him open.
Yeah.
Kenny was not good enough, but I think more accurate than he was in the first game, right? Okay. Yeah. And didn't make great decisions, didn't really take care of the football, through 1 interception, probably deserved to throw a second one, that very ill-advised throw to Najee Harris as he was running out of bounds on the sideline. But I still think probably did a better job of finding his open guys than he did in week 1. So I think there's positives there. But the enough thing is where it all falls apart, right? Our much better performance from Kenny Pickett was a 71.8 passer rating, would have been the worst of any starting quarterback in the NFL all last season. Worse than he was last season. That is just simply not good enough. So I understand the frustration, but I do think the Steelers showed progress. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting game to break down. I have not watched the film yet. I'm
well, see, that's what I was going to say, and that's why I asked the question the way that I did, because I think I watched it back today, and I do feel a lot better offensively with what I saw in week 2 than in week 1. But obviously, I don't expect every fan to go and do that. When you're watching on the surface last night's game, I don't know that you're going to come away feeling like, oh, all of a sudden within 1 week, this offense looked much better in week 2 than in week 1.
Yeah, much better, probably not. But they did look better. And I think they kept, the difference between the Steelers offense and the Browns offense was that the Steelers were able to win in spite of a bad offense. And the Browns' bad offense cost them the game. Right? I mean, that's the difference, right? Like both defenses played very well, but the Browns' offense was so bad that they cost them the game. DeSean Watson, mostly. I mean, Nick Chubb gets hurt. Nothing you can do about that. I thought Jerome Ford was very good. As a backup. The Browns' offensive line is still good. Amari Cooper played and played pretty well. Didn't look like a guy who bothered by a groin injury to me, right? So David Njoku was one of his best games against the Steelers. One of my pregame primer predictions was that no Terrell Edmonds was going to mean that he was going to go up, and he definitely did until he got that fumble from Cole Holcomb that really changed the game there late. I don't know. I think they were better. It's not where they want to be, but I think they definitely showed some signs of improvement. Talked to Mike Tomlin today about lots of things, but one of the things he said was like, I'm not concerned about our offense because I'm involved in the process. And like, I think anytime you're involved in the process and you can see immeasurable improvement, I think it's very easy to talk yourself into being on the right track.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
Doesn't matter how far you are from where you want to go. Like if I'm in the middle of nowhere and my car breaks down and I'm out of gas, what am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to start walking towards the gas station. And if I start walking randomly and I see like, oh, look, there's a gas station 5 miles away. Like I'm not really in a good spot, but I'm a little better than I was when I didn't know what I was doing. Like you have to, when you're in it, you have to measure the success any way you can. And I think, they're not going to beat their chest and crow about that performance or anything, but I think they feel like they found some stuff out about what this offense can do without Deontay Johnson in it.
And which they're going to have to figure out for a few more weeks as well. I think the one question was going to be really like that Ravens game before the bye, if we were going to get him back. Now we know that we're not going to. So we will see the Raiders, Texans, and Ravens before that bye. With where this offense is right now, and those opponents, obviously, maybe like some get right spots for this offense with the Raiders and Texans coming up. You said you haven't watched back on tape, but just at first glance, when you see like some things seeing improvement, would you agree with that? Do you think that there are a couple get right spots for this offense coming up in the schedule?
Yeah, I think the Raiders defense is anywhere near as good as the Browns, although you still have to deal with Max Crosby. I don't think the Texans defense is even as good as the Raiders. So that's definitely a couple. Now the Baltimore defense is playing really well. So now that's going to be a challenge. And I think we'll see about LA. I don't think LA's defense on paper looks very good. I haven't watched them play yet. But actually I did. I watched them play some of that San Francisco game. Their defense looks like it isn't very good on paper. It's done okay. We'll see. But, it does not seem like an overwhelming test these next few weeks to be able to find yourself as an offense. And that's really what the Steelers need to do. Get their mojo back, as Mike Tomlin said in his press conference today.
Yeah, and then I mentioned how much time the defense spent on the field. 35 minutes and 28 seconds time of possession for the Browns in this one. It was really about the splash plays from the defense. Now, I think it's fair to say that it's not really sustainable to get 2 defensive touchdowns per game from your team. But when you look at this performance, okay, well, let's have that conversation then. Like, how sustainable do you think, or how close can they get to replicating this type of defensive performance in a week in, week out basis?
I mean, they did that with no Cam Hayward and half a game and no Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, I don't know. Like,
very true. Yeah,
I think they could be pretty good. I think the Steelers defense is. Let me say this. I don't think that production level from the Steelers in terms of points and scoring points on defense and 4 turnovers and 6 sacks in a game where like you're trailing half the time, you never have the ball, and you give up 400 yards offense. That's probably not going to happen. But I think the Steelers can play better down and distance defense than they have. I still don't think we've seen the best version of this defense come out yet. Especially those. I think we saw some better communication. Mike Tomlin alluded to that from week 1 to week 2. I still think there's some gaps in there where things are sliding in between the cracks in terms of the communication and just the spacing between the safeties and the linebackers, safeties and the corners. I think Levi Wallace is getting them left on islands and abused in ways that he probably shouldn't, and they got to figure that out. I think they could play Joey Porter Jr. more, and that would be some help there. So I think that the defense probably will not have that kind of game again, but I think they can play better than they did. And so then I think the total output seems reasonable to me, that they can be that good of a defense in aggregate, maybe not specifically 2 touchdowns, but they can be that good of a defense in aggregate going forward.
What did you make of you mentioned Cole Holcomb earlier, and just like obviously playing at that second level? He's been brought in on a 3-year contract. They hopefully hope that he's part of that off-ball linebacker solution for the time being and in the future. What did you make of his performance in week 2? Did you think he bounced back after a really bad week 1?
I thought he was the most improved player from week 1 to week 2. I also think his assignment is probably the guy who had his assignment get the most, the easiest from week 1 to week 2, right? He goes from dealing with this 2-headed Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel slot concept monster against, Kyle Shanahan, who's one of the best at scheming it up, to the Browns, who basically play a lot of like 2 tight end, and Chubb just plays running back, and Njoku just plays tight end. And I think really he had a much simpler assignment this week. I'm starting to think about that 49ers game in terms of, some of those like week 1 games against the Patriots over the years, where it just felt like the Steelers defense might not have been as bad as they looked in that week because of the combination of like week 1 stuff happening while you're dealing with like one of the elite take advantagers of stuff guys on the other side, and Shanahan and that mix and match very dynamic offense. So I think I'm stock way up on the defense compared to where I was a week ago. I believed coming into this year that they could be a top 10 defense. I still think they can be a top 10 defense even without Minkah and Cam. They showed it. They can do that. They'll need individual players to step up, and they'll need to continue to hone in and maximize their scheme for what they got. But I think they can be that good.
Yeah, I would agree. You mentioned Nick Chubb there. Obviously, man, the most devastating thing that I've seen in person at a game, that injury. I mean, they didn't even show it. Like people were texting me, like they wouldn't even show it on TV at home and stuff like that. They did show it once on the Jumbotron there. I don't know if they realized or not, like if they were just showing a replay of it, and then they're like, oh crap, like we shouldn't have shown that. But the most devastating injury I've seen live. So all thoughts to him in a hopeful recovery. But that play where Minkah Fitzpatrick goes low on him as somebody's attempting to tackle him high has sparked a large conversation on X. I'm sure other places as well, but X is kind of where the go-to spot is for these conversations about it. Guys that are typically more on the offensive player's side are saying that it's a dirty hit. You never want to go low. You should never be chopping to the guy's legs like that. Guys on the defensive side are saying you're never going to tackle a running back like that going high. Minkah's doing the right thing. Unfortunate result of a play that he should be making. Alan, where are we at with this?
I think we're in the upside down again. Like back to just pick a different metaphor for the feeling I was describing at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the show. We are now to the point in the NFL where we are criticizing a safety for making a legal tackle against the best running back in football, or at the very least, like a top 5 guy. What are we doing here? Like, was he supposed to let him score because he might get hurt? Like, this is professional football. People get hurt. There's a reason why teams are afraid to practice. Right? Well, because even like the reason that teams are afraid to practice in pads and have contact practices is that even when players are going against their own teammates and trying as hard as they possibly can to take it easy on one another injuries happen. You can't legislate injuries out of football. There is a 100% chance of injury when you sign up to play the game. Nick Chubb knew that. And if you're the running back and you have a guy coming up over your shoulder and you're getting hit and you don't want somebody else to hit you low, go down. It's really easy. If you go down at the first contact, the second guy can never take your legs out from you. But you can't expect to try to fight off one tackler and let the second guy take it easy on you. That's just not how football works. I don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick should feel any remorse for that hit. I think he did his job. I think if I'm the defensive coordinator, I'm circling this play on the board today. I'm saying Minkah did what he's supposed to do. And if Minkah stands there and does nothing, and Chubb breaks that tackle from Holcomb and goes and scores a touchdown, I'm flagging Minkah and saying, what the heck is this effort here? 39. Like, that's his job, to stop him by any legal means necessary. If they want to legislate below the waist tackles out of football, good luck. I think you're going to make the game impossible, but it certainly isn't the case right now. So I think it's absurd that we're talking about that play. And also, like, do we not know who Minkah Fitzpatrick is at this point? I mean, this is not, listen, I think we can talk about this as a Steelers podcast and not be hypocrites, right? Okay. This is not Joey Porter or James Harrison making this play. Okay. Like, there are some people who have a bit of a, well-known proclivity for towing, crossing, smashing people over the line. Okay, Minkah Fitzpatrick is not that dude. He doesn't do anything dirty. Soft-spoken, professional, well-regarded by his teammates and opponents alike. Like, get out of here about talking about that guy being dirty.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting talking about, like, that's just the way that it is taught now. In a running back like Nick Chubb, that's what a guy who, how many pounds do you think Nick Chubb has on Minkah Fitzpatrick, by the way? Like 30?
Listed at 20, but I would say more.
Yeah. Okay. Either way, that's the way that type of player has to approach trying to tackle that type of player. But especially, now with all the information with head injuries and stuff, you're already lowering the target.
Yeah. What do you want to do? Like, you tell him he can't use his helmet as a weapon. You can't hit the other guy in the head. And you're talking about a guy who's low to the ground with his I mean, there's no other target. Like, you got to give him a place to tackle. Unfortunately, the knees are it. And look, like, I'm not going to minimize this. This is a bad injury for Nick Chubb. It's bad for his career. It's bad for football that Nick Chubb isn't playing. But also, like, your brain is a lot more important than your knee. Like, for your life, not just your career. Okay? Like you get a cane, like, that would suck. That'd be a bad outcome. I would sign up to play professional football to make hundreds of millions of dollars if I knew I had to walk with a cane after. I would not if I knew my brain was going to be scrambled eggs at the end of it. Okay? Like, let's be real.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the other part of that too is, like, people slowing down the clip and talking about it. Like, well, hey, if Minkah Fitzpatrick was able to play football, slowing down the speed of it like that, I mean, again, you have to make that play. But
Minkah was the last airbender, he could just get up underneath him and then hit him this way. He also slipped going into the hit too. So, like, he was kind of falling forward as he goes into it. Just like nonsense that we're talking about this. And, yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick is not a dirty player, and if he was, I would say so.
Yeah, but again, not to minimize this injury at all for Nick Chubb and the Cleveland Browns.
No, I mean, completely changes the complexion of the whole rest of the divisional race. Like, I hate to say this, especially because of why it happened. Cleveland's season might have peaked in week 1. Like, it might be over, and that's not me as a Pittsburgh guy saying anything bad about Cleveland. That's how much that guy means to that team, that offense, and how bad DeSean Watson looked at the same time. Like, well, that's all they got. Well, I mean, the offensive line can't block for nobody. I mean, I don't know. It's a good defense. They play hard. I like Kevin Stefanski as an X's and O's coach. I think he does lots of good things. But I can't, from my seat right here, see how they can survive this as a playoff hopeful. It just feels like it's lost.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said in a response to somebody talking about it. Like, I felt like with him, they're a fringe wild card team. They could definitely remain in the mix. Without him, I don't see how they're not missing the playoffs by like multiple games. Like they're not even going to be relatively in the mix with some of those other bubble teams. I want to talk about though. You just mentioned DeSean Watson. What is it at this point? Do you think like it's unprecedented for a player obviously to miss the amount of time he did and then come back and play at that same level that he looked like before? At the same time, it's like we really don't have like a body of work to go one way or another if it was possible. And he was still like 26. Is he 26 still or is he 27? Either way.
Now, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Either way, but yeah. So like, is it mechanics? At this point, it can't just be rust. Like that, it can't just be the excuse forever. He played 6 games last year. He's played 2 games this year, had the full off season. Like, what is it with him? Why is he not back to at least somewhat close to that level?
I don't know. I just think there is a very fine edge that you have to be honed to be a professional athlete. And I think there's a number of games or an amount of time there. If you miss it and if you're out for that long, it's really hard to ever get it back. I don't think it's just football. I think it's anybody. We've seen guys come back from missing that amount of time and had good careers. I think it's very rare to see guys miss that amount of time and come back and be the person that they were before, the player that they were before. I think you can see it across sports. I said the same thing 5 years ago or whatever when Jung Ho Kang missed all that time with the Pirates. Okay. And I feel like it's the same thing. He comes back. He was still working hard. He was still trying. In fact, I think he worked harder after the suspension than they did before. He was a little lazy before. Like he really tried. Like he just didn't have it anymore. I just think that is a thing that we see happen over and over again. Mike Vick even went to the Pro Bowl after he came back, but he was never the same kind of dynamic playmaker that he was those first few years in Atlanta. He became something else. He reinvented. Maybe that's the hope for DeSean Watson, right? Is that if he can't be DeSean Watson anymore, can he be someone else that's still pretty good? That I will say is possible. But what we saw last night was the opposite of that. What we saw last night was the single biggest reason the Steelers won the game was number 4 in white.
A lot of white, yeah.
Very little brown.
What's interesting is
strange to be the Browns and not. I think they're good looking uniforms. It's just weird to be the Browns and not want to wear brown. I don't get it.
Yeah. And we saw this last year in the last game of the season with him too, where like he extends the play a bunch, but then ultimately ends up taking a sack. So most guys, it's good at the quarterback position when you're able to extend plays. If you are then able to do something with the football, for him, he's extending a play just to end up going down at the end of it anyway, or throwing it away, or incomplete pass. Like his ability to extend plays hasn't actually resulted into anything positive for the Browns yet.
Extending plays only works if you're doing it because you have to, and then you're getting something for doing it. I feel like Watson just kind of extends the plays just to extend them and like turns down.
He's just running around aimlessly.
He turns down easy, completions that he could. I think we've seen some of that from Kenny Pickett this year too. Turns down easy stuff and then ends up making his life harder. Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, Kenny Pickett, Steelers offense. Let's go there now. Audibly, unless you were Mike Tomlin or anybody on the Steelers side, you could hear "Fire Canada" chants.
Well, Mike Tomlin said that he heard it. I will say, when you have your helmet on.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw something about. Oh, so it was just the players that said they didn't hear it.
There's the players that said they did, and then I don't know. If you're on the field, it's kind of noise. The stadium PA did bring up some music pretty quickly to kind of try to drown it out, I would assume. But yeah, you could hear it.
So let's have a little bit of a conversation about that now, because you said at the beginning when we first started talking about the offense, there was improvement from week 1 to week 2. What did you see? And obviously, I'm not going to ask if you thought those chants were justified or not, but
you can ask
where are we at? Obviously, from 1 week to week 2.
We can talk about that. I'm
okay. All right. Well,
let me ask you something. Since you were there. You were there.
Yes.
Were you a participator in the Fire Canada chant?
I wasn't.
Okay.
That's never really been my thing. Even when people boo and stuff,
yeah.
Really
Boo City, PA.
We are. There you go. The other Pittsburgh football team.
Boo City, PA. I I'll say this. I don't think there's anything wrong with voicing your displeasure in that way if you're a paying customer. I thought Mike Tomlin did an excellent job of handling that
I would agree.
conversation. It's just it's interesting to me that we've settled on this kind of being the talking point here. Like, we all know they're not going to fire him, right? And that not only are they not going to fire him, that there's nobody else that's going to be a reasonable upgrade right at this. Like, even if Mike Tomlin woke up today and was like, man, I'm just tired of this dude. Like, let's do it. Like, that's not going to result in better offense for the Steelers next week, like under any circumstances, and probably the opposite. Yeah. And like, there's somebody on Twitter was saying like, oh, the Steelers players are being told to protect Canada by, having to say they didn't hear it. I'm like, I mean, first of all, players don't listen for shit. So like that's a bad if your conspiracy theory starts with, oh, the team's telling the players to do this, probably not. Second of all, I don't get the sense that the players are that frustrated with the scheme. I feel like the players feel like they're not playing very well. I mean, you can usually tell when the players are pissed at the coach. And I'm not really getting a lot of that vibe from this team. Like, it feels like they're disappointed, they're frustrated. Some of them are being frustrated about their usage, which is common and expected. Happens to even great offenses. I don't really get the sense that like guys are pining for some kind of change to be made here. Certainly not like the players that matter.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying in terms of obviously making a change in season. Like, who would it be? Like Mike Sullivan ends up being the offensive coordinator for the rest of the season. Like,
just couldn't be. I mean, it couldn't be. Like, that's not even a realistic option. It would have to be like, is Byron Leftwich still unemployed? Like, that's like,
yeah, he is.
It would have to be someone like that. Like,
okay, I didn't even think about them bringing in anybody external for the rest of the season. Like, obviously they would make that change in the off season, but I didn't know if that would be something they'd be willing to do in season.
Well, I mean, look, the Steelers aren't going to. I mean, maybe if it's like week 11 and they're 4-7 or something like that, but like the Steelers are trying to make the playoffs here. Like, they're not going to do anything that's going to harm this week's game. And clearly firing your coordinator does that. They're not going to get to that road probably before the end of the season, no matter what happens. Like that's the thing, is like, can you make a case that Matt Canda doesn't deserve to be the Steelers offensive coordinator? Absolutely. But like, talking about firing him is talking about nothing, because like it's just not sensical to do that.
I saw a fan today say, honestly, it's just like basically wanting change just to make change. Like, firing Canada, no matter what the result is what they want to have happen, because it would ensure that they were doing something different next season.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand that emotionally, but not rationally. Right? Like, it's only change is only better if it's an change is only a good thing if it's an improvement. Can the Steelers hire better offensive? Like, I again will say this, and everyone's going to disagree, and that's fine. That was not that bad of a call. It's not like the coordinator was like committing malpractice out there. Like, he schemed up George Pickens to be open 10 times.
That one with Jalen Warren.
Right.
Was really
got Jalen
nice.
Warren open, got Connor Hayward open once, had Calvin Austin wide open, and Kenny threw it in the middle of his back. Like, there was some new stuff that we haven't seen before. I don't think it was that bad. I mean, there was a couple bad calls. Sure. But like, to me, that was about league average play calling.
I want to ask you about that. Their last offensive possession, that third down where they put it in Kenny's hands.
That one's a bad call.
Okay.
It's not a bad.
I was wondering where you were at with it. Like, is it a bad read by Kenny?
Yes, but it's still a bad call, because, the point of that kind of play is that kind of misdirection. You need to have the threat of a pass in the strategic concept. Okay, the defense can't go on the field saying 100% this is a run, or that play won't work, right?
Mhm.
If the defense is paying attention to the pass, then that play has a shot. But when you have extra linebackers in, because they're not, there was no, you'll look at the tape, there's no middle zone in that whole deal. All if Kenny just goes like this, some Steelers player probably comes up with it because there were no Ravens down the field. Okay, like, but if if the team is willing to sell out that way to stop a regular run, because that's, I'm assuming, what the Ravens were expecting, then they're gonna stop this run too. Like, it's bad play calling, it's bad strategy. It doesn't mesh. I actually thought that if I'm calling the play there, and look, I'm not qualified to do that, but if I'm calling the play there, give me a play action hero ball to George Pickens and win the game. Like, I think if you're gonna go down for like a gutsy play call on 3rd and 1, I like that one a lot better than I like Kenny on a read option. Like, Kenny on a read option, best case scenario, you get 3 yards. Give me a 50-50 ball to George. Like, I don't like, if you want to get squirrely with that call and you don't want to just hand it off, I think I'd much rather take my chances down the field for a chunk play than whatever that was that they tried. That was a bad call, but there were not that many of those. Like, that was the reverse to Calvin Austin. Sort of, I will say, mostly the same things I just said about that call kind of apply to that. The idea of a misdirection needs more downfield passing to get the linebackers out of the run lanes. And I just didn't think they had it. I thought the series after Kenny threw the interception was devastatingly predictable. Throws his pick, and then you come run up, handoff up the middle 2 times in a row. Like, you can't be that predictable. But man, do y'all people remember how much you hated every other offensive coordinator the Steelers have ever had? Like, do you remember that? Like, they all do the same stuff. It's like, it's not that different.
And probably hate the next one too.
I'm gonna hate the next one too.
I want to ask you the last thing, because you mentioned in terms of like player frustration and where it lies, if it's on their own performance, if it's within the scheme or what. It seemed like, and maybe you have a different opinion of the way it was last year for the players too, in terms of their frustration. How would you compare last year's frustration to this year's frustration, if you even felt like there was frustration for the offensive players last year?
I honestly feel like last year there was so much new that the offense didn't even really have any expectations to be frustrated by not meeting. I do feel like this year's preseason set up some expectations that they are frustrated by not getting to. Okay. But like, if you're saying that the preseason was good and that we should be as good as we were in the preseason, then you're also saying like, hey, the plays we were calling the preseason were fine. Right? Like, you kind of have to take the whole package. Like, if you're a player and you say like, we got to get back to where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago, well, where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago was Matt Canda calling the plays. Like, it's hard to point the finger at that guy. And look, he deserves part of the blame. Those were some bad play calls in there. The Steelers got behind the sticks a couple times because of them, and they had to punt the ball. But there were lots of other reasons they got behind the sticks too. The offensive line didn't block very well. Kenny was bad again. There was a couple drops. Like, I didn't think Najee Harris was that good, especially in the first half. There's plenty of blame to go all the way around if you want to blame it, and certainly the coordinator owns some of it. The last thing I'm going to say about this is this: when I'm talking about Matt Canada right now, I'm evaluating the offensive coordinator on his play calling abilities. But what I said this offseason was the biggest reason not to bring Matt Canada back was not that he's a bad play caller. It's that he has never developed a quarterback the way the Steelers need Kenny Pickett to develop. He has never taken an average talent and honed him into something special. And he's certainly never done it at the NFL level. In most of his offenses, the running back has been the star. The Steelers have invested too much in Kenny Pickett for him to not get the best development. And if at the end of the year, you look up at the stats, you say, okay, we were a little bit better, and Canada mostly called some plays that made sense, but Kenny didn't get much better, then I think he has to go no matter what. Even if the play calling decisions were good, the end product with Kenny Pickett is so much more important than that. But it is far too early to make any kind of judgment or conclusion about where Kenny Pickett is going to be in that development curve when we get to the time to make that decision at the end of this year.
I agree with everything that you just said. I think, his job goes beyond play calling, despite what people on X might say. So We will leave it at that. Alan, great conversation as always. Tell the people
Good
where they can
stuff.
find you.
Yeah, I hope I didn't talk too much for our one.
I don't know if you could tell in my voice. Like, it's a little bit weak today after last night's game, so I needed you to definitely carry this one.
Disgruntled commenter. By the way, why are you disgruntled but never gruntled? Just throwing that out there.
I don't know. I'm gonna be thinking about that the rest of the night now.
There you go. At @Saunders_PGH on X, at PGH Steelers Now is the site's account there. SteelersNow.com, at PGH Steelers Now on YouTube. That's where this lives. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. We want your vehicles, tailgate, mobiles, Steelers decorated.
I didn't really see any yesterday, and it was weird.
Whatever you got, boat, yacht, paddleboard, whatever. We'll take them all. And dog sled, whatever you got. And then we'll do this again tomorrow.
I think I'm gonna take a next home game. I think I'm gonna take a walk along the water there, see if I can see any boats. Yeah, I think it'll be worth it to take a trip and just see. But I am Zachary Smith, PGH, feeling very gruntled as of the time of recording this. As Alan said, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment down below. If you guys are listening somewhere that isn't YouTube, also leave us a 5-star review wherever that is. Thanks for tuning into another episode. This has been Steelers Afternoon Drive. For Alan Saunders, for Smitty, we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.